you hear a lot of things in today's world like, well, that's just my truth, or you have your truth, I have my truth. But I guess my question is what is the truth? We live in this sort of political climate or mindset in general of moral relativism that what was okay for one person is not okay for another person, and this sort of fluctuating right and wrong sort of concept.
Yeah, and I would deem it more cultural than I would political, because I think the political sphere is just reflective of what's going on culturally.
Sure.
So I would deem this as more of a cultural phenomenon or phase, whatever you want to call this, that we have going now, where there appears to be no such thing as objective truth. Somehow, some way, we've claimed ownership, personal ownership of truth, where you have yours that you own, and I have my truth that I own, and the two shall never intersect. And welcome to yet another episode of the Identity Crisis podcast. I am your co-host, Jalen Thompson.
Dylan Schweitzer.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, yet another episode of this podcast.
Woohoo! Round 5, man.
Eventually we're going to have to stop saying like the number of episodes that we're on, because it's going to start getting ridiculous. Like nobody cares that we're on episode 42.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, except when we get to like the important numbers, like the 50th, like the 100th.
Whoa.
Yeah, those cool numbers. But like eventually it's like, okay, people don't
care. And you think of like someone like Joe Rogan who's in like the 5,000s or something, and it's just kind of like
nobody cares. Nobody cares. But so we're back. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you like and follow us on Facebook and whatever platform that we choose to disseminate this information on. It's going to mainly be Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, we've been throwing out a lot of different attention-grabbing conversation starters and different Facebook groups and stuff like that. So, of course, we got our podcast material on here, but we like to have conversations with people on there with different subject matters. So feel free to check us out there.
Absolutely.
Now, a big talking point that we've kind of touched base a little bit on our Facebook page, but the main thing I wanted to talk about today is the concept of truth. Okay. Now, you hear a lot of things in today's world like, well, that's just my truth, or you have your truth, I have my truth. But I guess my question is what is the truth? We live in this sort of political climate or mindset in general of moral relativism that what was okay for one person is not okay for another person, and this sort of fluctuating right and wrong sort of concept.
Yeah, and I would deem it more cultural than I would political. I think the political sphere is just reflective of what's going on culturally.
Sure.
So I would deem this as more of a cultural phenomenon or phase, whatever you want to call this, that we have going now, where there appears to be no such thing as objective truth. Somehow, some way, we've claimed ownership, personal ownership of truth, where you have yours that you own, and I have my truth that I own, and the two shall never intersect. Except for when we agree on something, I guess.
Right.
And so it's an interesting dynamic, though, because of the ramifications behind it, the effects that we see of it. So we're going to dive into some of that today, and let's just see where the conversation kind of takes us. What if this idea is true? If truth is relative, what happens as a result of it?
Yeah, absolutely. What happens when you follow that to its logical conclusion?
Right. So let's dig in, man. So you want to get into some of these?
So yeah, actually, I have. I made a fun list of different popular claims you'll hear that are sort of moral relativistic. You want to try them out?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's try them out.
So Jalen,
lay it on me.
It's obvious. There is no truth. What would you say to someone like that if they said something like that?
Okay. So if someone said to me, there is no truth, my first question would be, is it true that there is no truth? Because if it is true that there is no truth, then there is truth.
Right. And if it's not true, then we dismiss the statement
altogether.
Right.
So that would be my question would be, is that true that there is no truth?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're the individual making the claim is appealing to truth to say there's no truth.
Exactly.
You're accessing the thing you're denying that exists,
which is self-defeating.
Yeah, and another one we have on here is, well, what's true for you isn't true for me.
All right. If that's the case, well, I guess in some spaces that one does have some legitimacy to it.
You think so?
In some spaces, but I think we have to be very careful with how we use that one. Like, for example, if a person says, I have asthma, okay, it's true for me that I have asthma. If you don't have asthma, then it is true for you that you don't have asthma. Right. So that one has some legitimacy to it.
Yeah, but I feel like that's more like you have a condition, I don't have a condition. That's a little bit different.
Right.
But I think in terms of a moral thing, I think it's really interesting because this is a claim is only true for the one who makes it, and it isn't true for anyone else. If so, then why is the person bothering to make the claim in the first place, since he obviously believes it does apply to others?
Right. Well, now when we get into the moral sphere, now things get a little different. I was more so kind of throwing out a general example where it actually works. But when we get into the moral context of it, well, now, I mean, now
actually, here's a great representation. Do you have your phone?
Not on me, no.
Oh, no?
No.
Let's pretend this is your water bottle, okay?
All right.
Is that your water bottle?
Yes.
That's just true for you.
And you're going to take it and drink it.
This is my water.
Wow.
That's just like your truth, man.
And then you drink more of it.
My truth is delicious.
Well, that was a violation of my truth, I guess. I don't know.
Is that true?
I don't know. Is it? No, that just happened. I'm kind of conflicted.
Well, here's the other thing. Jalen, we have no way of knowing truth.
Okay, my response to that would be, how do you know that we don't have a way of knowing truth?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think it was Immanuel Kant. A great way to kind of remember his philosophical mindset was you can't know the real world, kind of using his word in place of the word can't. You can't know the real world, as in you have no way of knowing that. But of course, you would have to know that statement to be true in order to make a claim about the world.
Right.
So if there is no way to know truth, how can you know that the statement's true?
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So that's another self-defeating one, because you would have, in order to know that we have no way of knowing truth, you would have, that implies that you know truth.
Right.
So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, so
but here's the thing, though. We can't judge. In fact, you shouldn't judge.
Okay. That statement in and of itself is a judgment.
Yep, there it is.
Because you are judging people for judging.
Right. I always thought that was really interesting. And it's funny. And I think a lot of Christians either get that thrown at them, or maybe even some less read Christians will even say, well, the Bible says you shouldn't judge, kind of referring to Christ's Sermon on the Mount, chapter 7 in Matthew. It says, judge not. And then he says a bunch of other stuff after that we typically ignore.
Yeah, we typically scratch the rest of that out. We kind of like to leave it at that judge not part.
Yeah, we're like, I like that part. Don't need the rest of the judge.
Yeah, we kind of leave the rest of that stuff out of it. So I don't think anybody knows how the rest of that reads.
Right, yeah. It's funny because if when you read that, when you go a little bit farther down, it actually gives you a direct way on how you should properly judge people.
Right.
So we're not, as Christians, we're not taught to just not judge people. We're taught how to judge properly.
Exactly. Yeah, because ultimately, and let's kind of hang here for a second. Ultimately, all a judgment is a decision.
Right.
That's all it is. So if, like, for example, I'm married. If you think for 1 second I married my wife without judging her, and she married me without judging me, you are out of your mind.
That'd be a poor judgment.
that'd be a poor judgment not to judge somebody before you marry them. How did she determine that I would make a good husband?
Yeah, and even in a less dramatic sense, I made a judgment on what clothes I wore today.
You did.
I made a judgment on the route that I was going to take to work, what I was going to eat, all these little things. So these are all micro judgments, we could say. And so I think we often think making judgments on other people's decisions is oftentimes what we think too. So moving outside of just like the minute or personal life decisions, we think we oughtn't judge other people.
But you have to. How do you establish relationships of substance without judgment? How do you enter into them? How do you choose to leave them? Those are judgments,
right?
That's all they are.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna pick your friends, you have to make judgments on their characters.
Yes,
you ought. You don't want to just be friends with just anyone. Well, I wouldn't want to be friends with someone I have, no interests, no agreements with, no similar scheduling.
Can't different styles of communication don't get along very well.
They're a Packers fan. I'm a Bears fan. It won't work. It's a bad decision.
Oh yeah, that's pretty hostile right there.
Oh yeah, don't remind me.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one.
Okay,
Jalen, this one is really obvious. Okay, and I'm surprised you haven't gotten it yet. The scientific method is the only way of knowing truth.
Oh my God.
It's the only way you can know science, or the only way you can know truth is with science.
Okay. Can you scientifically prove to me that the only way that I can know truth is by science?
No.
My point. Exactly.
that's one that gets thrown out a lot, like just like science being the end all of be all of truth. But there's so many different things that are true that have nothing to do with science. Science is predicated on philosophy and thinking and all of these sort of things that we forget about.
Absolutely. And let's put a pin in this right here really quick. Please stop. And this is for the atheists out there, for the agnostic, the whomever. Please stop trying to use science to disprove God. The question of the question of God's existence is not a question of science. It is a question of philosophy. Please stop saying I can scientifically disprove God, because if on one end you tell the Christian that we can't scientifically prove God. So then if I can't scientifically prove God, I can't scientifically disprove God either.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
The question of God is a philosophical question, not a question of science. All science is the study of processes.
Right. And science doesn't say anything.
Exactly.
It just shows what happens when you test certain things. And so we can appeal to scientific data, perhaps, like when we talk about, and this will be a whole other episode eventually, the fine-tuning argument. We appeal to the different precisely fine-tuned things of the universe that was allowed to allow life to permeate and exist and flourish and happen on Earth.
Right.
And we can appeal to the data that we do have about that. But I think there's a difference between scientifically proving and science being the only way to access truth. And again, like you said, if we go to the concept, the scientific method is the only way to know truth, the statement itself is not a scientific truth. And you can't put that statement and test it and verify it through the scientific method.
Yeah. And once again, there is scientific truth, and scientific truth is good. Science is a wonderful branch of knowledge.
Vitally important.
Yeah. But please don't sit here and tell me that you live your life based on science. That's not how we live our lives. We live our lives based on historical truth. Right. We live our lives based on experiential truth. And those are probably more important to us than scientific truth is in any regard. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that up about the whole scientific, knowledge and God and disproving science. I had to bring that up because I'm so sick and tired of seeing atheists on Facebook scientifically disproving God. It is so exhausting.
We'll dedicate a whole episode to that.
Right.
But
what other ones you got?
That being said, with that concept, Jalen, you really need to be tolerant of views that aren't your own.
Okay.
You should be tolerant of views not your own.
Okay, so when I think about that, would that person be intolerant of me not being tolerant of other views?
That's interesting, because I'm the person making the claim is basically saying that you have a view that's wrong.
Okay.
By being intolerant, it's wrong to be intolerant, and in a sense, I'm being intolerant by stating that.
Right. I guess that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Is that are you being intolerant by saying that I need to tolerate other views that are not my own?
Mm-hmm.
If it's my view that I don't want to be tolerant of other views,
right?
You're being intolerant of me, not being tolerant of other views.
Right. Yeah, that one's fun. There's not a lot other than that to unpack with that one.
Right.
Now, this one was probably the newest one that I found. It might be my new favorite of moral relativistic statements.
Okay.
Mainly because it's not only self-defeating, but like as soon as I say it, it defeats itself immediately. So here it is. History is unknowable. Now, I'm going to unpack this because I love it so much.
Go ahead.
So that statement I just said is in history.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I know that I said it. And I got it on camera.
No, or do you know that you said it? You don't know that.
That's your truth. Speaking of your truth.
I don't know. And now you're going to drink my water. You don't even know that that's my water, actually.
It's just your truth, man.
But is it? Do you know that?
Man, what is truth?
I don't know if we can. I don't know.
We're getting too far away.
Yeah,
we're getting scared. Yeah, it's a little too meta.
This relativism stuff is just out of control.
It's a little spooky, but history is unknowable. I love that one because how could you know literally anything? How could you learn anything? Because it's everything that we learn is predicated on knowledge from other people who have had experiences in their life and they're sharing it to us.
Yes.
I mean, of course, in my own life, I have experiences and I learn things myself. But I'm going to resort to that information from the past and make decisions and judgments and live my life accordingly based on the knowledge that I have. Or if I'm going from teachers, I'm going off of the experiences they have or from a historical standpoint.
Yeah, and that statement kind of presupposes that historical knowledge is not a legitimate form of knowledge.
Right.
Which is a ridiculous line of thinking because if you think about it, a lot of the events that have taken place in our personal lives, as well as, throughout the history of the country, throughout the history of the earth, whatever, you're basically saying that all of these events are illegitimate when that's clearly not true. And there's no way we can live our lives based on that. Because if that's the case, somebody's going to come along later on down the line when we're all dead and gone and say none of us existed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're going to say because they're in their history now. It was 100 years when Jalen and Dylan did this podcast.
Right.
100 years ago. We don't know that actually took place.
Right. Which I laugh because we spent all this time setting up and recording and everything just for someone to say that.
This is going to happen, I'm sure. Well, based on this line of thinking.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one. Jalen, you're so judgmental. You shouldn't force your morals on others.
Wouldn't that be you forcing your morals on me? That I shouldn't force my morals on others? Wouldn't that be what you're doing?
I did kind of make a moral statement, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not much to say about that one.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's just literally like I have a moral preference and you can't have a moral preference. So I'm going to push it on you.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're doing.
Yeah, you're pushing your moral preference on me that I shouldn't push my moral preference on others.
Yeah, that's a fun one. So those are all the some of the really popular moralistic relativism statements that you hear today.
Right.
The fancy term for these is self-defeating.
Right.
They're dead before they even walk out the door. And so I think they sound like they make sense. Actually, this is a quote from my friend Jason Brandel. He says, it makes sense if you don't think about it. And I think a lot of these moral relativistic statements are just that.
Right.
There is no truth. Oh, that sounds edgy and philosophical. That makes sense. Yeah, man, that's just your truth. But if you really start to unpack it, kind of like what we're doing today, it doesn't really make any sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I agree with that. But let's talk about why moral relativism is attractive. Before we get into some biblical content.
Sure.
Let's talk about why moral relativism is so attractive.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why it's so attractive is because it allows for everybody. One, it feels good because it puts everybody on the same playing field.
Yeah.
In terms of the way we think, in terms of level of intellect, in terms of opinion. It puts everybody on the same playing field and makes us all feel good that all ideas are welcome.
Right. And I think it's also almost like a security blanket, not to be condescending by any means, but it does feel better because, especially if you're in your young 20s or something like that, and you're going to college or you're really starting to study things in general on your own, and you just realize how vast different fields of thought and schools of thought and things to learn about that you just don't know. There's this great diagram that I saw, and it was like 1% is what you do know, 1% is what you know that you don't know, and then the rest of the pie chart is what you don't know that you don't know. And I think that's the part that's scary. And I think that's what's attractive about moral relativism. It's like, well, if there is no truth and everything's just kind of nebulous state in a sense, it's a lot more freeing, and it makes it less daunting to take on all these things. And especially if you're investigating different religions. I mean, if we don't look at only the major religions, there are a lot of religions in history, and so it can be kind of scary at first to think, well, I have to do a deep analysis of all of the religions and learn all of the science,
which is impossible. I mean, that's impossible. But I do think another reason why moral relativism is so attractive to us is because we as human beings hate authority. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use a curse word here on the podcast. You ready? Human beings don't like submission.
Oh, you said the S word?
The S word.
We're going to get banned on YouTube.
Probably.
Yeah. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
And especially as a young man who definitely still struggles with it, but used to have a lot of issues with problems with authority and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I can 100% relate with that.
Yeah. And I think the main thing that makes moral relativism attractive to us, whether we acknowledge it or not, is moral relativism is the quickest way to deify my own opinion.
Oh, okay. Could you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So if there is no objective moral standard to live our life by, and it's all a matter of personal preference, well, my personal preferences become God. And no one is in a position to challenge me on my personal preferences.
Because that's just your truth.
It's just my truth. And so if it's all a matter of personal preferences and just a taste, do you like beans or broccoli? Do you like Coke or Pepsi? If that's all it essentially boils down to, well, then it's whatever I call it. So if I want to say that, let's throw something out there, stealing is okay, so long as it gets me to where I need to get to.
Speaking of which,
see, like you did with
your truth tastes great.
My truth water, I guess, I don't know. But if I say something like that in the culture of moral relativism, there is no one to ultimately challenge me and say that I'm wrong by any standard. What standard are they using to call me wrong? Well, let's say I'm using my own standard. Well, I'm using my own standard to call myself right.
Yeah, it's interesting because as Christians, our standard is God, and He is the authority. And so when someone does something right or does something wrong, we appeal to that standard and to say why they're wrong. If there is no objective standard of morality, it's completely subjective. And so I become the standard. I think that's the big thing. And so I guess I see what you mean about the deify thing. I think when people, if you were to tell someone you just want to be your own God, I think instinctually they're going to say, no, that doesn't really make sense. But when you kind of unpack it a little bit, where you are the standard, you are the authority, you're living your truth and all that sort of stuff, it starts to make a little more sense. It sounds dramatic on the surface, but when you unpack it,
you are referring to yourself as the source and origin of all truth. That's what you're referring to yourself as.
The deification of self.
The buck starts and stops with me.
Now, I think the other thing is with moral relativism, if there is a God, it's easier to say he's evil because we're just going to use my standard of truth.
Ooh.
So, for example, you know, you hear a lot of things thrown out in history, like the Crusades or
Salem witch trials.
Sure. A bunch of things that have happened in history that seem to point towards Christianity being the cause.
Sure.
And so we think, oh, therefore God is evil because this is my opinion. And it might even be a well-researched opinion, might be a very poorly researched opinion. But then we can just make that claim and just say he's evil. I think it's much easier to say that instead of using a standard to make that claim.
Right. Because, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because when you think about it from that perspective, the question becomes, well, what moral standard are you using to call God evil?
Right.
And then you have to self-reflect and realize that you are either using your own moral standard, which is your own personal preferences, or you're stealing God's moral standard to call God evil.
Ain't that funny?
Then
stealing from God to make a case against him. That's a fun one.
I mean, this is going to collapse on itself,
right?
At some given moment here, and so that's where you end up with that one. But once again, that's part of the reason why moral relativism is so attractive. It gives us legs to stand on, even though we really don't in the case of God being evil,
right? But I think,
but it makes us feel like we do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So earlier we talked about trying to follow something to its logical conclusion, or living it out, we could even say.
Sure.
And so if we take this concept that morality or truth in general is completely subjective or completely relative, what kind of happens if we live that out? I think is something we can consider. The first thing that I thought about, should we start small or should we just go nuclear? What do you think?
Let's start small.
Let's start small? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I had wasn't very small. We're going nuclear.
Let's do it.
The Holocaust was just Hitler's truth.
Oh, buddy.
I went straight for it. I'm sorry. Well, let me unpack that a little bit.
Go for it.
If there is no truth, if there is no objective standard of morality, what are you going to say that what Hitler did was wrong? Now, and here's the funny thing, especially if the scientific method is the only source of truth, Hitler appealed to Darwinian evolution as the reasoning for why he was trying to kill Jehovah's Witnesses, Jews, and Gypsies to make the human race better.
And homosexuals in that too.
Absolutely, yeah. And so who are you to go against Hitler's truth? He's just trying to make humans better. He's just trying to make the race thrive better and be better.
That's altruistic.
Yeah, he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And if truth is relative, well, that's just his truth. If there's not something we can appeal to say he's wrong, he can't be wrong. It's like playing a football game with no rules. If I throw an interception,
it's not an interception. It's not wrong. Well, it's not bad. I shouldn't say it's not an interception. It is an interception, but we have no standard by which to call interceptions good or bad. They just happen.
And more so, if there's no rules or anything, it doesn't really matter what the point of my play is. I'm not trying to score touchdowns necessarily, or if I am, it doesn't really add up to anything because there'd be no scoreboard, essentially.
Right, and nor does it matter whether or not the other team intercepted the pass, because if there's no purpose to the game, how would they know to take off running toward the other end zone?
Yeah, they could just run to the sidelines.
Or just
locker room.
Or catch the ball and
sit.
Punch a hole in it. I mean, how do we don't know what to do?
Yeah, just sit on the ball.
Right.
It's like that's a bad move. What do you mean bad move? There's no rules of the game.
Right.
And so if we apply that same concept to the way we live our world, which again sounds crazy, and that's the point, that it's not really a worldview you can live out and understand to its logical conclusion. So if moral relativism is true, Hitler didn't do anything wrong. He was just living what he felt was right. He was just living his truth, man. And why are you stepping on Hitler, man? He's just trying to live.
Got a point there. And that's actually what the Nazi lawyers appealed to in the Nuremberg trials. They went the moral relativism route, and it was genius. It actually halted the trial, because that's what they appealed to was, hey, these Nazi soldiers did not do anything wrong. Who are you Americans to come over here with your culture and your standards and come over here and impose them on Nazi soldiers? They were just simply put carrying out orders and following the culture in terms of persecuting and killing Jews.
Yeah.
That's what they appealed to.
And it stopped the trials.
Stop the trial because it made sense. If moral relativism is true, it made sense. We're just following orders. This is how we conduct ourselves morally here. I'm just blending in with the crowd. This is what we do here. We gas and exterminate Jews, and you just fall in line. That's just how it goes. You know, until Robert Jackson comes along and he says, wait a second, no, I'm not buying this. Doesn't make sense. There is a law above the law of culture that says that gassing Jews is wrong.
Right.
And so he appealed to a moral standard beyond that of culture, beyond that of self, beyond that of community, and said, no, these are human beings created in the image of God. I'm not sure if he actually said that or not, but that's what he was appealing to. That these are human beings with intrinsic value because they've been created in the image of God. And that's why gassing them was wrong, regardless of what you felt about them.
Yeah.
And they actually kicked the trials back into gear, and those soldiers were prosecuted.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, there's a few more ways we can kind of work that out in general. I don't know if you have one that you want to run with.
Sure. If more relativism is true, then it also follows that slavery is not wrong. Not objectively.
Wow.
That's another one that we hit on. If it is a matter of personal preference, well, then as a slave owner, it is my personal preference to enslave people for free labor, to produce product that makes me a lot of money,
right,
and helps me to take care of my family. And if you don't want to follow the instructions that I give you as my slave, I can beat you and or kill you and legally get away with it.
Right, right.
And there's no one to tell me I'm wrong because that's just my personal preference.
Yeah.
Try living that out.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Like, you can just tell as we say these things, like, even just hearing that, I'm just like, my brain is like buzzing, like, does not compute. Because of course we have this embedded truth within us about what is right and wrong, this sort of morality. I think the Bible talks about, in a sense, the morality written on our heart, the law of the Lord on our heart.
Yeah, and someone would call that our conscience.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you hear things like that, I'm sitting there, even as someone who knew Jalen was going to say that, I'm sitting there like, what? And I knew it was coming, and it still don't make sense to me. Right. And so it's something that just kind of blows my mind in general, this sort of concept. Another one, maybe this will be our last one that we'll do, is, and this is a big one. So rape is simply lovemaking.
If moral relativism is true.
If moral relativism is true, rape is just lovemaking. I mean, that's just the way someone chooses to have sexual intercourse. They just don't like it when someone is consenting to it. And that's just their preference. I mean, why is that a bad thing? I mean, that's just their truth after all. And
the issue that we run into with that is, if that is the case, then why do we have a police force that we call when something like that takes place? And they tend to come out and affirm the idea that whatever that the rape that just took place is objectively wrong.
Right.
And the woman who may have, or the woman or man who experienced that rape, I'm pretty sure when they call the cops, they're not going to say, hey, in my opinion, something bad just happened to me. You guys, just my own personal preference, I'd like for you guys to come out here and investigate this.
Yeah, they wouldn't say, I perceived myself to get raped, or I perceive something is my truth that I think I was. It's like, no, you're going to say, this is what happened, and it was wrong.
It was I was violated. My dignity was violated. I was treated less than a human being, and I demand justice.
Right. And so it's hilarious because we will, on the surface, constantly, and I mean just we as a culture in general, will say that morality is fluctuating through cultures, and it's different from person to person, your truth versus my truth. But underneath that, once we get pushed and when we take someone's delicious truth we immediately affirm that, oh, wait, no, there is an objective truth. And a little experiment you can do at home if you're having a conversation with someone, and kind of like what I did with the water bottle, just ask, hey, can I see your phone for a second? And they're like, sure. And then just put it in your pocket. And be like, what are you doing with my phone? Like, what do you mean your phone? That's just your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately it gets the point across because you made it personal. You took something of theirs that was probably a couple $100 and that they use all the time. Let's be honest, we're all addicted to it too. So we got that attachment mixed in. But it kind of shows that your truth, my truth, there's really only the truth, and we appeal to it constantly. We can ignore it all day long, but at the end of the day, we appeal to this objective nature of reality of what is right and wrong.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually a good segue into some scripture, because I know that we oftentimes, especially nowadays, because the Bible was written such a long time ago now, we tend to think that what was written in that book doesn't apply to what's going on here now.
Right.
And nothing could be further from the truth.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you like that one? So I want to talk about this idea of moral relativism in Scripture, and kind of places where we see it. And I think that the entire ideology of moral relativism can be traced back all the way to the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, it's in the Bible.
Yeah, with the serpent and Adam and Eve. And I think at the root of that ideology is the question that the serpent asked Adam and Eve in the garden, when he said, "Did God really say?" And the reason I say that is because if God is sovereign, then whatever he says, his creation will adhere to. So, for example, if God says the ocean is purple, the ocean will be purple. It will turn purple because of God's sovereignty and him being in that position of authority. When he says something, it goes. And that's just the end of that. And so when Satan said those 4 words, did God really say? He put this pebble in our shoe, if you will. He put this block up in front of us in terms of giving us a little crack to now start to challenge the authority or the sovereignty of God when he says things. Did God really say there were only 2 genders? Yeah, I went there. I'm sorry. Did God really say that marriage is between a husband and a wife, a man and a woman?
Right.
Did God really say that the marital bed of a man and a woman is just for those 2 alone? Did God really say that sex was only for married people?
Right.
Did God really say that life begins at first breath, or life begins at conception?
Right.
Did God really say? And when we start to challenge that, all of a sudden we find ourselves with the opportunity here to deify our own opinions.
Yeah.
Because if I challenge what God really said, I can say, no, he didn't really say that. This is okay, that's what he said, but here's what I think he meant.
Right.
And you see that in my actions. You'll see that in the choices that I make.
Absolutely.
In my own life, and people make in their own lives all the time.
Yeah, and actually, I wanted to just read a small excerpt of that section really quick, because I think the way the wording of the serpent is just so slick. Like it's almost impressive.
Smooth operator.
Yeah.
Operator.
And it's at the beginning of chapter 3 in Genesis says, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God has made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden. You must not touch it, or you will die.' 'You will not certainly die,' the serpent said to the woman, 'for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.'" And I thought that's really interesting, especially the concept of deification, where he says, oh, no, you will become God if you eat it. And that's a really fascinating thing. Like, no, you don't have to appeal to the authority. you can be the authority.
Mm-hmm.
I just find that.
And even in those words that he used, you see relativism all in that, because he said, like you just said, you will be like God,
Mm-hmm.
which means if you are like God, then there is no objective standard of truth.
Right.
You can become that.
And the beautiful thing, the way that, again, there's a lot of things you could pull out of just these few verses, but in all of Genesis, up until this very point, God is referred to as the Lord God, as in your authority and everything. But the very first time it's not referred to as Lord God is when the serpent is talking. It says, but did God say, not the Lord God, referring to a position of authority, just like another concept or a being. I find that's very, very slick.
Very slick.
And it's really impressive in a sense, like how slick he kind of threw that stuff in there. And the most interesting thing is that even despite all of this, it says you will surely die, and yet God did not kill them, which is really interesting. This is a little bit of a mini segue, but instead allowed them to live, even despite their poor actions and judgment.
Yeah. Now they did die a spiritual death.
Yes.
They didn't die a physical death.
Right.
But they did die a spiritual death, which later on God resuscitated.
Right.
Through the work of Christ. But yeah, so I think that this idea of moral relativism extends all the way back to the beginning, but it continues throughout Scripture. And we see it. We can go to the New Testament and even look at it in the book of Romans.
Yeah, Romans 1:25 says they exchanged the truth for the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator. And I love the word exchange there. Really interesting. They kind of traded objective reality, objective truth about God, about the source of creation, the source of objectivity and truth and everything, for a lie, specifically, not for your truth, not for your opinion, but for something that's wrong.
Right.
And it's just really interesting. And instead, we worship and serve created things instead of the Creator.
Moral relativism.
There it is.
The quickest way to deify my own opinion.
Yeah, go here, not there.
Exactly. And so, not only do we see it there, we also see it in another Old Testament book.
Yeah.
The book of Judges.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. That book ends in a very hopeless state of being.
It's the Mad Max of Old Testament books, man.
Yeah, and it ends in a very abrupt and uncomfortable way. But there's a lot to unpack to it that I kind of want to dig into. So I think the last verse is Judges 21, verse 25. And it says, and in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. Here's what's interesting about that verse. Israel had never had a king at that point.
Oh, that's interesting. That's right.
There had never been a king in Israel.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that the writer highlighted that there was no king in Israel when there's never been one. What are you talking about? But if you observe a little deeper, Israel was under a theocracy at the time. God was king in Israel. So the verse really reads as is saying, and in those days, there was no God in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes.
And that's really interesting, because all throughout this point up until Judges and throughout the Old Testament in general, there's all this sort of idol worship and worshiping of other gods in general too. So there is, at least in the smallest sense, no unanimous agreement on what is right and wrong. You know, you got one person worshiping the Canaanite gods, another one worshiping the drawing blanks on all of the different tribes from 3,000 years ago, but
Baal and Asterisk. You know, I know the Canaanites participated in child sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
You know, sex with temple prostitutes. You know, it's interesting how all these other gods except Yahweh seem to appeal to all of the different pleasures.
They're just better at marketing. That's all.
Yeah, that's, you know, because I just find it interesting that all of these other gods tend to agree with all of our human inclinations as far
Come
as
to the
things
Canaanite
are.
worship. Get your own prostitute for $4.99.
Yes, yeah, something.
I mean, yeah, if that was a 1920s sales pitch, I'm telling you, the Canaanite religion would be the biggest thing in America.
I'm telling you, it's like right around the corner.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so, but that is another verse where we see more relativism being lived out, and the children of Israel at that time were in a dire state.
And the worst thing is, Judges is like a spiral. It starts out with something small that happens, it gets worse and worse.
Yes.
Right before this scripture gets dropped, there was a civil war that broke out over a woman who was brutally gang raped.
Yes.
And now think about this. This woman was brutally gang raped, and then a civil war broke out, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Or relativism.
Think about how that the logical conclusion of this. It can't be more relativism. Ultimately, can't be lived out. Not legitimately. It can't be. It can't be lived out. And the reason it can't be lived out is because once something goes wrong.
But it's interesting. You said wrong. Appealing to something being right or wrong.
Exactly. I mean, we already got a problem right there.
Yeah.
What do I mean by wrong? And so once that happens, all of a sudden we run into a matter of personal opinion. So like we brought up in Judges, this woman gets gang raped. Who's the rape bad for?
Yeah.
Wrong for who? You know, it's stuff like that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, so when we get into these type of issues, we see that more relativism can be lived out. This your truth, my truth can be lived out. I got a personal example of this actually.
No, okay.
I've nothing to do with rape. But I got into a car accident on Tuesday.
Oh, interesting.
And won't go into the details of it. But the person involved in the accident, she admitted that she was at fault in the car accident that we got into, and the police showed up. You know, that's what you do. You get in an accident, you call the police, they show up, so you do your reports and the insurance and exchange, everything like that. But when the cop got there, what neither she nor I did was say, "Officer, here's my truth." Neither one of us did that. The officer walked up to us and said, "What happened?" And he asked for we gave our perspectives on what happened. But neither one of us claimed ownership over truth. We just simply told him what happened. I was driving and person tried to merge over, didn't see me, sideswipe me, everything like that, right? But neither one of us said, "I'm telling you my truth, and here's how it went." Neither one, no, that's not how truth works.
Right.
No one gets to claim ownership of truth.
Right. And that actually reminds me of this meme that I saw when I was like a kid. It's a picture of these two people pointing to a number on the ground, and it's what seems like the number 6, we'll say, but it's written down, and one person is below it, and one person is kind of above it, we could say, and one's saying that's 6, and another person is saying that's a 9, and the caption is essentially saying, just because you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong. And at first, it's like, whoa, that's like really eye-opening. Like,
enlightening.
It's enlightening, you know? But you have to think about it. Someone wrote that number. Intelligently designed, we might say, hinting at another episode. But there was an intention behind what that number was supposed to be. That the artist or the writer intended it to be a 6 or intended it to be a 9, or we could even go as far as to say wrote it down to specifically confuse people. But either way, there was a specific intention behind what it was supposed to be. There is an objective truth about what that number actually is. There's just two different perspectives on the matter. One of them's wrong, one of them's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I can understand why the other person may see it that way. It doesn't make you right. It opens the door for a conversation and unpacking the information that you have, the information I have. And I think that's where the moral relativism slippery slope starts to begin, where we look at two different perspectives on a matter turning into two different realities of truth on a matter. And that's a very, very different thing, just having a different preference on blueberries.
Yeah. And you're right. And also, too, if moral relativism is true, then it is also implied that there is no objective purpose to life.
Jalen, your life is meaningless. And that's my truth.
That's your truth. But then in my truth, my life is the most important life that this planet has ever seen. Which one's true? That's the issue that we run into. And so when we say that moral relativism is true, that's the problem that we run into, is that ultimately we're saying if there is no right or wrong way to live life and it is all a matter of personal preference, then that also means that there is no objective purpose to life by which we are to conduct ourselves either.
So I guess it kind of, to draw to a close, what do we ground that objective truth in at the end of the day? What is the grounding of objective truth from a moral sense then?
It would have to be a personal God. It has to be. You know, and that is the only source of objective truth that we're going to find for grounds for morality. It has to be an objective God. And it has to be a personal being as well, because a moral standard or moral code of conduct can only come from a personal being. So this, when we say God, we are implying that God is personal being.
Right. Inanimate objects don't give preferences.
Exactly.
Or conduct, like you said, about what to do and what not to do. Oughts, you could say.
Exactly. And that and God is also where we get our standard of justice from. The very standard of justice flows from God. Integrity, honesty, truth, all of that flows from the character of God. And that's where we get objective morals and more moral absolutes, whatever you want to call them. That's where we get the grounds to say things like, you ought not do that.
Right. Absolutely. In fact, it was Christ who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
And no man comes to the Father but by me. My man. That's all. That's all we got for today, guys. I think that's the end of this episode. You got anything else?
I think it would be a truly good thing if you liked and subscribed us on Facebook and YouTube.
Objectively true.
It's objectively true that the YouTube page will grow and get bigger with your help and support. We thank you guys for checking us out today. Be sure to be on the lookout for other Facebook posts and other episodes coming again soon. Until next time, I'm your co-host, Dylan Schweitzer.
I'm Jalen Thompson.
And we will see you next time.